Welcome everyone. Today we have with us Ronak, who has secured All India rank 13. Well, while reading the profile of Ronak, I was feeling like, wow, he's like always have been an achiever. He has been a gold medalist from St. Xavier's College. He also secured first rank in commerce in his entire state board exam in class 12th. Then he is a qualified chartered accountant, and there also I can see that he is All India rank 5 in the final, All India rank 2 in the inter, and then All India rank 10 in the CPT, all in first attempt. So a very bright person. Later on, he also has some good job experience. He has also worked for an NGO. He has done social work, and so but when he started his UPSC journey, he witnessed two setbacks, one after the another. So I want to ask Ronak, कि Ronak दुख हुआ? Were you disheartened? That was it a shock? Could you believe that these two attempts you are not able to clear prelims? How did you deal with it?
So definitely दुख तो होगा ही, and moreover like when we get stuck in the prelims itself, so that is like biggest impediment, that too twice. And so उससे भी ज़्यादा issue क्या हो गया था, like I had just got a rank in my CA finals, and then after just the next year I couldn't clear the prelims. So that was rather just from from the peak to the lowest and deepest trough. So it was really disheartening. And so had it not been because of my family, I would not have even given this third attempt. I decided that I'll be going for the third attempt in around December last year. So had I not decided it and not gone for it, then I would not have achieved what I have today.
So the family support is very, very crucial in this exam, the support of your significant others.
Totally, sir.
Okay. So, Ronak, in your third attempt, you achieved great success. So, what do you feel in retrospect कि क्या कमी रह गई थी पहले दो अटेम्प्ट्स में, और इतना गैप कि पहले दो अटेम्प्ट्स में प्रीलिम्स नहीं हुआ और थर्ड अटेम्प्ट में इतनी अच्छी सक्सेस? सो क्या लैकिंग रह गया था? आपने अपनी अप्रोच स्ट्रैटेजी किस तरीके से चेंज करी? व्हाट चेंजेस डिड यू ब्रिंग इन योर अप्रोच टू गेट दिस सक्सेस इन द थर्ड अटेम्प्ट?
So first of all, rank is determined by mains and interview. And for the first two attempts, I did not get to give the mains and personality test. तो सर उसमें तो कुछ अप्रोच में कुछ चेंजेस ऐसा कुछ था नहीं. And moreover, like the three levels of the exam, the prelims, mains, and personality test, all three test different aspects of a person. So in my very first attempt, I was really underprepared, and I wouldn't say that I was prepared and might be some other variable factors were at play. I was really underprepared, and had I cleared prelims, it would have been unfair to the exam. But in the second attempt, I really did not know, because like I was prepared well. Might be because of lack of practice, or might be because of the wrong guesses. I cannot really be sure of what went wrong in the second attempt. But what I did extra in third attempt was give more mocks and work on the pattern of attempting questions. Like I have told it in my other videos as well. I'll just repeat it once again on how you attempt the number of questions you attempt, and how you minimize the negatives which you get in the prelims. So a senior told me that you divide your paper into 4 parts. One is A, which is हमको आता है and I'm attempting it. The other is half T, which is half tukka, which means that there are 4 options and I'm confused between 2 of them. So A, B, C, D. I'm sure that A is not the answer and C is not the answer. So it's either B or D. There's a 50-50 chance of getting it correct or wrong. So third is 1/3 tukka, which is 1/3 T, wherein I'm stuck between 3 options. And the fourth one is full T, full tukka, a total blind guess. Now, so how this helped me was that we read the paper 2 or 3 times. It's not that we attempt all the questions in one go. So she told me that the senior told me that like averagely there are 5 questions on each page of UPSC question paper. So when you're reading the first page, you for example, when we see the first question, I'm sure the answer is C. So on the paper, I'll mark C, not on the OMR sheet. Suppose question number 2, I am stuck between A or C. So it's a half tukka problem. So I'll circle the question number 2 and then write half T over there. So in this way, I'll solve all the 5 questions on the paper itself and count the number of A's, which is I'm sure that it is the answer and I'm attempting it. And suppose it comes out to 3 questions in the first page. Similarly, I'll count all the other pages, and let's assume it comes to around 45. So I'll be getting an averagely 90. But to be on the conservative side, we'll assume it's 84. And assuming the cutoff is 105, a healthy margin of safety, we now need 20 more marks approximately. So now I'll go to half T's, and that half T suppose comes to 30. Then 15 should be right and 15 should be wrong. 15 will give me 30 more, and the 15 wrongs will deduct 10 marks of mine. So I'll get 20 more. So in this way, I know that if I attempt 45 plus 20, 65, I am on a safe range. In this way, I'll not be attempting the 1/3 tukas and the full tukas, and moreover, I'll not have any sort of prejudice on how many questions I need to attempt. Like many people have their minds made up that I have to attempt 80 or 90 or 100. So because it depends on the question paper. Suppose the A's are a handsome 60, no need to attempt anymore. You are definitely going to get 114 or at least 104. So this way, we are not prejudiced by the number of attempts, and we minimize the wrong guesses. So this, I think, helped me in my prelims.
Okay. So रौनक बट मतलब इस सब चीज़ के लिए टाइम मिल जाता था एग्ज़ाम में, लाइक व्हेन यू आर राइटिंग अ टेस्ट लाइक अ मॉक टेस्ट, does this natural how this calculation became natural with you? Was it with practicing more and more mock tests, and what is the role of the mock tests and the real tests? For example, like abhyas is held by, like the Vision IAS, it holds abhyas. So what is the role? How do you get habituated with this calculation part which you mentioned?
So this grid system needs to be practiced at home or in the mocks, because if we do it directly in the exam, we might end up leaving the paper unfinished. And normally what people say is that prelims, we have a lot of time, but if we are following this grid system, then time might become an element which is a barrier. So if what I did was I practiced this pattern in around 15 comprehensive mocks, not in the sectional mocks. Like there are sectional mocks, there are full length tests. I did this in the full length tests because this is not really useful in the sectional mocks. And rather, whatever way you are analyzing yourself, it's better to always analyze in the comprehensive mocks, because sectionals are too skewed. We either know a lot of things or we do not know a lot of things. So yeah, the mocks really helped me a lot. And so because I prepared from Calcutta itself, I was staying here only. So I had enrolled for Abhyas. I went for 2 of those tests because I wanted to go for a classroom type of experience and be in that environment. But if someone cannot access that, then it's totally fine. He or she can even do it at home and analyze his or her score. But the key to it is practice.
Okay. I was talking to someone, and they said that like half of the battle, it is in your mind. That is not just the intellect, but it is also your emotions. So how did you keep yourself calm after these 2 setbacks which you had?
So like, first of all, in my first attempt, I was not really I did not make up my mind I'll have to give another attempt. Like, and most of the people do think that I'll try and do it in first attempt. So what my advice is to the future aspirants is that kindly make up your mind. It might need more than 1 year. I hope it doesn't, but it might need. And regarding me, how I kept myself calm is that, sir, like I am at times I really had a bad cry. I used to scream. I used to talk to my parents, like whatever. But the thing is that my parents were there to help me out. They were there to listen to me cribbling about all these stuff. So if you have somebody like a parent or a friend or anybody, that is something which is the key to it. And moreover, so this passion is such that like once you have invested 1 or 2 years in this entire preparation, this passion again pulls you into the process. So even if you make your mind that no, I won't be giving another attempt, and that is why people do go and give 6 attempts, because this passion is such that once you have invested so much of time, you really want to attain it in the end.
Okay. So you mentioned the role of parents, which is, I totally agree, it's very, very important. But कभी-कभी जैसे there are many students who are staying outside of their hometowns. तो उस केस में एक रोल मॉडल कभी-कभी एक इम्पॉर्टेंट हो जाता है, या फिर एक मेंटर, a mentor or a role model becomes that psychological support, that guiding light. So, and even if not a role model or this guiding light, they can be a support system. So according to you, from the, yes, the parents, they give that emotional component, but regarding more kind of this kind of a support system or a role model who can like guide you xyz, what is, did you have any such role model or such support system, and what is its importance in the exam process?
So the basic idea is that you must be having someone whom you can speak to freely, and that someone should not let you feel down. That is the basic idea. Be it any role model, be it a friend, be it a neighbor, be it a relative, be it a parent, anybody can be that role model. And so moreover, if any outsider, he or she might guide you, but they will not show faith in you. They will not tell you that no, every day you can't call him or her and cry about your problems in life. So there might be cases where you do not have parents, you have friends. You do not have friends, you have relatives. If it depends on whatever, but at least have someone besides you who knows you in and out, and trusts in your capabilities, and reminds you of your strengths and weaknesses as well. Like, it's not that he or she should be just totally tell you that no, you're the best. If you're getting 90, you will definitely score well in the prelims. He or she should remind you also on how much waters are you in. Because like if some of my friends, they are staying in Delhi, if he tells me that I'm getting 86 in the all India tests, I tell him that it might not be something which will sail you through in the exam. You have to get at least 98. So I just cannot tell him that no, 86 is fine, you will sail through, no problem, just go on attempting. So that is a basic idea that an honest opinion is also needed at times.
Yeah, so ultimately the core lies within you and the rest is like a support. So like I was watching a documentary and someone said that you cannot know water by just reading the word water. So you cannot feel the water unless you are inside, that water. So you have to go through it. So I totally agree with you. Very valid point. Coming to the topic of your optional subject, you had optional subject of commerce, which is like taken by not many students. So what would be your message to the students who are taking this optional? What are like the positives or the negatives? And एक और चीज़ है कि when people take optionals which are connected to their general studies, so people feel that okay, if I'm preparing for let's say public administration, then some part of my GS paper 2 is being covered, some part of my GS paper 4 is being covered. So like ये क्या है? What would be your advice to those who have taken commerce, and how did you manage the general studies part with the commerce part, because there was no overlap?
So one most important thing is that the one who is not from a commerce background will definitely not be opting for commerce. But the problem lies in the fact that many people who are BCom graduates or they are CA or CS students, they say that because of the syllabus being too long and because the success rate being less, should I opt for some other option? So the idea behind optional is that it should be an asset and not a liability. So if you're not good at your if you're not good at your background subjects, if you're not good at commerce, if you did not excel in CA, if you cleared CA in 4 or 5 attempts and you do not have the spark for accountancy or taxation for that matter, then it's always better to go for some other option. But if you're really good at it, then just because the syllabus is huge, one should not really brush away commerce as the options. I'll tell you why. Because like it has every option has two papers, paper 1 and paper 2. Paper 1 is something which is more or less practical aspects, and it has already been covered in totality in the graduation as well and the CA inter as well. So if somebody is really good at his basic stuff, then paper 1 is a sail through for them. Coming to paper 2 was something which was new for me as well, because it is more or less a total management and total theory. And the people who have done from DU, they might have some overlap in the graduation subjects, but I did not have any because I did from Calcutta St. Xavier's College. But still, because my paper 1 was already under control, I could save some time for paper 2 and for my general studies subjects. Now coming to the second part, wherein people opt for overlap subjects or for subjects which are supposedly famous for getting marks. For that matter, we can talk about anthropology or we can talk about public administration. But sir, however short the syllabus might be, it is something which is very new to you. And the idea behind optional is that you are really good at it and you really know that subject in and out. So when I was studying commerce for my optionals, I did not study what is depreciation because I already knew that right from my class 11. And incidentally, this question came in the exam: what is depreciation? What is the use of depreciation? What is the relevance in taxation purpose? And it was a full 20-mark question. And so I had not studied this separately for my optionals, but because the concepts were so clear in my mind, I did not need any second thought on how to answer it. But if somebody chooses a new subject as optional, then he or she will have to study those basic things also. And it's a given fact that there are many overlaps between the general studies paper and the optional paper, but the approach to these two are totally different. We need to know even 1 plus 1, and we even need to know about the exponentials and the integrations. I'm just telling you about how extremes we need to know in optionals. It's always better to know your graduation, to stick to your background subjects if you're good at it. And I think it worked for me. I really am not sure how much I got in my options because my paper one, although I knew almost everything in it, but there was a problem in my time management in the actual exam. So I might end up getting less marks in paper one, but still it worked out for me. So I'm happy with it.
UPSC surprises you. When your marks come, you will see that the papers, where you expected that you would have performed really well, those were those were not the ones. So ऐसा रहता है. बट आपकी बात सुन के मेरे को एक ये भी लगा कि एक जो पॉपुलर परसेप्शन है कि कॉमर्स में और जीएस में कुछ चीज़ कॉमन नहीं है, द पॉपुलर परसेप्शन दैट I think that's not valid because as you were talking about depreciation, so in the GS3 like your economics is there, so commerce would help you in like paper 3, and like you were talking about paper 2, it is about management. So I think ethics has a component of leadership and management. So I think you would have there is some overlap between the commerce optional and the general studies part as well.
So that's just sugary way of putting it, but really there is no overlap because these are just depreciation word is there, but really we do not need to answer questions about that in GS3 or for that matter in GS4. But the thing is that a person who has commerce background, he or she will be comfortable in GS3 because it has a major chunk of economics in it. That element can be added to it, but really there is no overlap between the two.
Okay. So, can you also guide the students regarding your time management? How did you divide the preparation for optional and the preparation for general studies?
So I'll tell you about whether I prepared for mains before prelims or not. So this was my third attempt. In my first attempt, I had prepared for my optionals thoroughly. Like I had completed the syllabus once, but I did not do anything about the other topics of mains. Like I did not read about ethics, I did not read about governance or social issues, nothing for that sort. Then when I was giving my second attempt of second prelims, I did not study anything on for mains, only prelims, nothing else. Now since I had got stuck in prelims for 2 attempts, this third attempt I did not even think about mains. It was only about prelims, nothing else. Just around 15 days I had studied for the basic paper 1, and that too because if I cannot clear prelims, I will go for teaching the CA students, and in that aspect I'll be revising through my papers for tuitions. But that was not really a full-minded preparation for mains. So basically I started preparation for mains after the prelims was done. So just I think it was on 2nd June last year. So when I came back home and analyzed my scores, and it was well within the cutoff, then from the next, just 2 days after the prelims, I started preparing for my mains. What I did was, sir, that till the date results came out, I completed my around 1.5 papers of optionals, like one full paper of paper 1 and half of the paper 2. And along with that, I was doing a little ethics, not complete, just little bit by bit. After the results came out, we had around 2 months, 2.5 more months. Within that time, I gave around a month or 1.5 months to my optionals and full 1 or 1.5 months to my general studies. That's how I divided it. And because we had a gap of 5 more days between the GS papers and the optionals, So at the last time before GS, I did not revise the options. I just revised all the 4 GS. After the GS papers were completed, I revised my options. Within we had 5 days, and that was really sufficient for the revision. So that's how I divided it. And so moreover, what I did was that because I had studied for prelims thrice, so the basic papers like history, geography, polity, these were really into my mind. So I did not give much time to these. I just revised them once before the mains, and the majority of time I gave to mock tests. I gave to governance, I gave to international relations, social issues, and most importantly to ethics. Because these were the areas. Ethics is an important paper. GS for a full 250 marks is there, and it is again a make or break situation. If we are really good at it, we get good marks. If we are average, we end up getting just below 100 or 110. So I gave more, invested more time in GS4 and essay writing, and balanced to my options.
Okay, so what I'm able to extract out from your answer is that a very important element that you adjusted your strategy as per your situation. Like you said that in your third attempt, your focus had become prelims. So it's a very important takeaway that there is no one model which can be prescribed to every student. Every student needs to look inside, look at his strengths and weaknesses, look at her situation, that where her preparation is, and then accordingly take steps, right?
Exactly, sir. So as I told, because prelims is testing the objective point of a person, mains is analyzing the analytical and subjective portions, and personality test is personality. So a person might be good at something and bad at something. So he or she should work on his strengths and then capitalize on that. Everybody should not start answer writing the day he or she start preparing. Like there's a concept that if you want to, if for example, if I'm preparing from today onwards, from tomorrow itself I should practice answer writing. That is not really the way to do it. Whether you are good at prelims or not, first ensure that you are going to clear prelims, or at least you have built the base, and then build on whatever subjects you want to, or answer writing, whatever your weakness is.
So usually students have this doubt, and like there are different opinions, that some students say that we are right now studying for prelims, and then some students say that we are preparing for mains now. A usual query comes that the syllabus is more or less the same, just that the way of asking the question in the prelims is of objective type, whereas the way of asking the questions in the mains is of subjective type. So therefore students, they feel this thing that okay, now we have to study for prelims, now we have to study for mains, all the subjects are same. So what's your view? Should one categorize his preparation or her preparation like this, or he should study the subject and then maybe 3 months before the prelims he or she starts attempting prelims questions so that orientation becomes objective? What is the right strategy?
So when I say that I am studying only for prelims, it does not mean that I am studying only from an objective viewpoint. I am studying that entire subject as a whole, be it for answering MCQs or for answering a mains answer. It's not that I'll just be reading non-cooperation movement in the objective pattern or these questions can be asked. I'm reading as such. If somebody tells me tell me something about non-cooperation movement, I can tell him or her in detail. When we differentiate between prelims and mains preparation, we are differentiating between the additional subjects. So like when I'm saying that for 5 months study only for prelims, I mean don't study social issues, don't study governance, don't study ethics, don't study IR, and don't study disaster management or security issues. That is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that do not study it from a subjective viewpoint. So when I was reading it, it's not that I only had the objective mindset and did not, like, every time when I was studying, for example, volcanoes, I had my mind that if the question is asked, what are different types of volcanoes, explain with example, I can write that answer as well. So I'm not just studying composite volcano means this, and I have no idea about the other three at that time. So that was my approach. So when I'm speaking of integrated approach,
students do is I just want to interrupt you here. What students do is they choose a book that this is my book for history of prelims, and then they choose another book and they say this is my book for history for mains. That I think in a way overburdens them, and it also hurts their revision because they have to then revise 2 books instead of 1.
So in fact, I did not have different books. For all the common subjects, I read only one book. When I was reading Spectrum for history, I read that for prelims also and I read for mains also. No, I did not read India before independence, that book for mains. I did not. Similarly, when I was reading Lakshmikant for prelims, that was my book even for mains. I did not read D.D. Basu. So when I'm reading Shira Mai's notes for economics, it's also for prelims and also for mains. The thing is that when we before prelims we go for a monthly magazine or a PT or study focus only for prelims, and before mains we go for mains focus. That is the only thing regarding current affairs. But regarding the static subjects which are common in both prelims and mains, I did not have different books at all. I had the same set of books and I revised the same set of books even before the mains.
Okay, okay. So now we have reached a phase where we have completed our prelims, and so now, how much time did you give to answer writing after your prelims or before your prelims? That is the mains answer writing, and what role, according to you, answer writing plays in developing that what you say examination temperament or psychological preparedness for sitting in mains?
So again, answer writing can be strengths and weaknesses for different people. Like for me, it was a strength because I was from a state board. Then I did my graduation. In my BCom, I had to write subjective answers. Even in my CI, I had to write subjective answers. So it was not a weakness for me. My speed was also fine. I did not have a problem in completing the paper. But for some people, they might have bad handwriting. They might have lower speed. They might not be able to collate all the facts on all the points for a particular topic. So it depends from person to person. If he or she feels that he or she is bad in answer writing, then they must start from the day one of prelims. What I did was that after the prelims, like as I told you, for 1.5 months, for 1 month, I just did my ethics and my commerce. So I was not much focusing on answer writing. What I did was so that I was reading the answers written by others, so as to know that what all areas do I need to write on, and what all topics do I need to cover in a particular heading. So like for example, where we have different portals available, like I referred IAS Baba. They have this TLP, Think Learn and Practice. They have 5 questions every day, and like students from all over India, they upload their answers. So I just read those answers and I did not write myself. I just read and saw that which is the best way of writing. And it's not only about what you are writing, but also how are you writing. Like, making word diagrams, including some good introductions or conclusions, different dimensions which you can cover. This is what, enhances the level of the answer. So for 1 month, I read those answers, but along with that, I practiced 2 essays because essay writing is such which we cannot really get into just in a month. So I practiced 2 or 3 essays in that 1 month. Just the day when the prelims results came out, after a week of that, I wrote a GS1 mock. Although I had not read any of the chapters of history or geography, but I just read the additional topics and social issues, and I went for GS1 mock. It was good or bad doesn't matter. I just wanted to see whether I'm able to complete the paper in 3 hours or not, and secondly, whether I can write something for an unknown question or not. That is the main idea behind it.
Yeah, actually, that's very important because UPSC gives questions which stumps the people. That so that's why I really liked your that point also, that when you had the conceptual clarity, that then it gives you the strength that if there is a bouncer in the exam, then you can still hit it for a 6. So that's a great thing. Okay, from your profile, I also noticed that you have had a good working experience, and there are many aspirants who are working professionals, and they are thoroughly confused at times that whether they need to leave the job or they can clear the exam without leaving the job. So how to go about it? What will be your suggestions to the working professionals?
So I was not a full-time working professional, so I might not be the correct person to answer this, exactly. But still, if a person is working in a full-time job, that to a corporate private job, then he or she should just have a larger frame in mind, not a 1 year at least. just have a larger frame in mind. And secondly, try and do smart work, like, because the time is scarce, better to focus, on your strengths first of all. Give mocks earlier so as to know the way your reading is correct or not, because sometimes we have read the book entirely twice, but still when we see the question for the first time, we understand we have not studied it from that perspective. So the basic idea is to see the questions which they are asking, to study it accordingly. And like, if a person who is working right now, he or she wants to give a prelims attempt the next year, the focus should be only on the prelim subjects right now, not even options for the time being. First, complete the entire subject of the prelims. If you have time, then work for options, and then again go for the mocks. Don't, please, kindly don't waste time on the options in the first 2 months itself. Build your base so as to be sure that I am going to answer the options in the mains. That is the basic idea.
So I think that's a big takeaway for the students who are going to appear for prelims in 4th of October. Still, like I know you have already talked a lot about your preparation strategy. Any special message for the aspirants who are going to appear, especially in this environment when we have this online, kind of a thing, because physical classes are not taking place in the coaching institutes. So how to use technology? What is the importance of online platforms for learning, especially for the students who are going to appear on 4th of October prelims? What will be your suggestions?
So I, for myself, had used a lot of YouTube videos for my preparation, and I'll tell you how I took breaks. Like many people, they turn off their social media, they turn off YouTube, Facebook, WhatsApp, everything. What I did was that, for example, if I take a 10 minutes break, or a 15 minutes break, so either I go for a nap, for a 10-minute nap, or I go for a YouTube video. Like, I followed some of the channels on YouTube which are dedicated to UPSC. I did not take them as a substitute for my study material. I just went to the videos whenever I was, bored of the books, and they there merges random videos on random topics. So when you can recall those random topics, for example, if I'm reading Lakshmikant right now, and if I see a video on revolt of 1857, and if I'm able to recall that, there's nothing more joyous than that. And moreover, when you get to recall random topics, it really enhances your preparation. So my advice is that do not go off social media. Utilize YouTube, utilize Facebook for your advantage. And because in 2016, so many online courses were not really available, but right now we have ample lots of stuff online, which is available online. So there is, I don't think that this corona is much of a hindrance in the preparation. If you have access to internet, there is no problem in the preparation.
Actually, this online thing also is, nowadays we are seeing technology in, for example, people use softwares for note making. So what is your approach, or what will be your suggestions with respect to note making, and what role can technology play with respect to note making? Like, there are different softwares which are there where you can make your notes. So, like, what was your approach, and what will be your suggestions from your learnings?
So I, for one, did not make notes ever. Like, neither in my class 10, 12, BCom, CA, and nor in my UPSC preparation. So I might not be the person who can tell you about one Evernote, or Word document, or any or notes of the Apple. I cannot tell you about that. But the only thing which I used for notes was, I had 2 or 3 documents separated topic wise. Like, there are some topics which are asked in essay writing, which are asked in GS 1, 2, 3, 4, and which might be asked in your options as well. For example, we have economy, we have agriculture, we have foreign relations, we have women empowerment, we have education, we have health. So these are important topics for all the subjects as a whole. So what I did was, I made 2 sets of documents. One was a statistics document, and the other was a quotation document. So whenever I came through any particular statistic while preparing for it, I wrote it in my in a statistics document under a particular heading. For example, if I'm reading economy, and I go through a quotation by Christina Lagarde, or the IMF chief then, who had said that India is a bright spot in the world economy right now. It is one of the fastest. Whatever, I mean, I can't really recall that exact quote. I used to write that quote in the document, and I could use this in my essay writing or as an introduction or the conclusion. For example, there's a quote in international relations that in foreign relations there are no permanent enemies and permanent friends, only permanent interests. So I wrote that under the heading of IR, and like there are two questions of IR asked in GS2. So I started or ended one of the questions with this quote. I think India America US relation I use this quote. So this is how I used the quotations and the statistics to for the essay writing and for the GS papers, and also for ethics, because ethics actually when we are answering any question on ethics, specifically the part A, which is the theoretical aspect, we need to touch on different dimensions. I'll just give an example. If a question on CSR is asked, we just should not end up writing the definition and the basic points. To add an element to the answer, we have to include different aspects. For example, we have to include SDGs also. We have to include the trusteeship concept of Gandhiji's also. We have to include the triple bottom line concept also. We might give the example of Tata. We might give the example of Bill Gates Foundation. We might give an example from real life scenario. We might give an example of current affairs. So when we add these dimensions to any particular answer in ethics, then the marks might soar because of these added dimensions. Because a person who is writing just the basic points of the book and a person who is adding these other flavors, definitely there will be a difference in the marking pattern. So for ethics, I
shows
believe
an application of
That's how we can put it. It shows an application of mind. Okay. Okay. So, like, I'm curious. So, if you never made notes, then I think we can learn a lot from you. That if we do not want to make notes, then how to go about it.
So, like for example, if for mains, I'll tell you for what I did for mains. I had referred the standard books. I had referred main 365 of Vision, and I had referred the study focus of Rouse. So let's say that we are reading about agriculture. So there is not much in the static books which I need to refer for agriculture. All the statistics are already mentioned in that main 365. There might appear that when I was reading Study Focus magazine of Rao, I might have come across one or two additional points. So I just put two of those points in the Vision Wala page. Or for example, if I find that Rouse has a better take on that particular topic, I'll just write the additional points from Vision on the Rouse book. So in this way, I have to study only one topic from one place only, but I am using 2 or 3 sources on that particular page. But I'm not making a full-fledged note on that and not wasting time on that. Similarly, when I talk of ethics, when I was, for example, when I'm studying even CSR, so while revising, when I was revising the first time, I wrote all those points which I will be keeping in mind whenever CSR comes in the question paper. So I wrote triple bottom line, I wrote trusteeship concept, I wrote Tata, I wrote LTG. So when I am just writing these crisp things on the top of a particular page and beside a particular topic, every time when I will be revising the topic, that thing will come to my mind. So when I'm reading compassion, I have written Mother Teresa there. So I will, by hook or by crook, I will not forget the example of Mother Teresa quoting that in the answer. But if I see a quote of Dalai Lama who says that compassion is a thing which makes an animal a man, I think that is a quote. So I'll just write that in the place where I'm reading compassion from. So when I revise, I will also revise that quote. So this is how I used to interlink my sources.
Okay. So actually, I asked this question because note making is like people talk about it. And second thing is that it helps you in memorizing. So what is the strategy if you are going the way which you went, which is like you are using the original source itself, you might be reading it again and again. So what is the strategy for improving memory? People say, aspirants say they are unable to remember facts. And so how did you manage this part, the revision part, which is very much linked to the memorization of facts?
So everybody's memory technique is different. Like somebody, remembers things in bullet points, irrespective of the place it's mentioned. But when I was memorizing things, when I recall things, I recall it according to the page where I've read it from. So if I'm answering a question on India-US relation, then in my mind I will assume that yeah, I have read it on the left page and this point is written here at the top. And this there was a diagram on the bottom left. So this is how I used to recall in my exam. So it's better to revise from a particular source so that that positioning is not interfered. Had I changed my book of prelims and mains, then this pictography will totally be damaged. So that is why I always revise the same thing from a particular place. I might add some dimensions to that same page, but the page will remain constant so that that page, when I'm recalling, that page comes to my mind instantly.
So as they say that you should read a book 1,000 times instead of reading 1,000 books if you are like preparing for a competitive exam. Okay. Right. So next, what is left is Ronak, the interview part. So can you please tell us that how did you prepare for the interview part, and what is the importance of having good extracurricular activities? Like students have simple doubts. Some students feel they don't have a hobby, and then they feel that they should be, imposing a hobby on themselves. They're like, they feel that if we leave it blank, then we are committing a great error. And so at times that artificiality also comes in, that I need to have a hobby. So like, what are your views on interview preparation and especially this extracurricular activities part?
So one thing should be kept in mind that it's not interview, it's personality test. So that artificiality which anybody wants to gather upon in the personality will definitely be washed away within 5 minutes. So if somebody says that playing football is a hobby of mine, then it might totally, if it's true, it's totally fine, and he or she will definitely defend it. Even if a question which is very weird is asked, he or she might say that I play it for fun. So if I do not know it, it's fine. But if somebody is making that as a hobby artificially, then he or she has in mind that no, it's not really a hobby of mine, and I made an error. So while answering, again, there will be a fallback. So the basic idea is that stay true to your personality. The only thing which you need to develop is confidence. That is the only thing which we need to develop and add to the personality. Otherwise, whatever the personality is, it should remain same, and the answers and the expressions should totally be reflective of one's inner personality. So talking about extracurricular activities, so I had a lot of extracurricular activities in my school days and colleges, but I had no sports in my CV, in my DAF. I did not write any sport just for the sake of it, because I might study all the theory of it, but because I do not really feel it, it's no use in writing that. So like my hobby was teaching, and that is really a weird hobby. Like how can you teach every time you're free? But that is really a hobby of mine, and if that is a reality, you can easily defend it. My hobby is writing poems in Hindi and English. So if the person is asking me of any particular poet, I can say I write poems and I do not read one. So it's totally a perfect answer. We do not really need to know each and in and out of that particular hobby. The thing is, you should really feel for it. That is the basic idea of this preparation.
So a hobby is something which you actively engage in. So while preparing, how did you maintain the hobby of writing poems? You can maintain, but about teaching, how did you maintain that hobby, or did it come up in the interview that how are you maintaining your hobbies?
There's a difference between what you pursue as a hobby and what you do in your free time. Because what you do as a refreshment. Because sometimes I might have 10 minutes of break, so I might watch a Netflix series, but my hobby might still be teaching. So when I was preparing for mains or for interview, I did not have that much of free time to go out and teach. So it's perfectly fine whenever I have that much. If I have a day off, rather than spending it on my bed or rather than spending it in the field, I might go and teach in the classroom. So it did not come up in the interview, but I had this answer prepared that if it comes up, how will I engage in it? And moreover, like another hobby of mine is writing poems. So I did write many of them. Even like when I was preparing for mains, I started every essay with a poem of mine. I can write instant poems, so I wrote that. So I really do that. So if a person in the interview tells me to write a poem instantly, I can do that, and it's totally justifiable.
So that means that your personality has coherence. If you have that confidence that it's actually my interest, then yeah, that's great. So one very core and important part of this personality is motivation. Now, I was reading about you. We did a little bit of research about you, and we came to know that you are from a business family. So, you did not have that environment, that bureaucratic environment. Recently, there was a newspaper report that said that 50% of the India's bureaucrats, they come from bureaucrat families. Right? Probably it's, of course, I think it is because of the kind of conditioning, that the kind of environment that they are brought up in. So, in your case, from where did this, perseverance, this motivation, this zeal for putting yourself to get into bureaucracy with this huge amount of effort that you have put in for constantly for 3 years or 4 maybe. So how did it come in when you came from a business family? What was it? What triggered it?
Sir, I did not really know about civil services till 2011 when I was in class, 2010 rather, when I was in class 11. Then my grandfather and his friend, they told me that we can earn lots through business or through any particular job, but the satisfaction which you will get in civil services and the prestige which you will get here is something which we cannot really get in any manner, and that is unparalleled. So at that time, he had told me that if possible, do it. He is no more though, and he died in 2013. And by that time, I hadn't started preparing for this. But after he had told me, I had looked about this, and after my class 12, I had made my mind that I'll be going for it. At least I'll be giving a try for this. So I cleared my CA finals, and to ensure that I do go for the preparation, I did not take up a job. So since I had got a rank, I was getting a very handsome pay package in a very good company, but I intentionally did not take it because if I take it, it might happen that my mind might go towards MBA or towards that money making of that corporate office. So for that reason, I did not go for a job, and fortunately, I was fed well by my family, and I could teach, so I could earn my bread and butter. It's not necessary that everybody will have that financial freedom, but still, at least just that, to have in mind that this is not the thing which I'm doing for, and I'm just doing it for my both ends meet and not as a profession. Then I think that we can have that passion to complete, to achieve what we aim for.
So that the lesson which I drew just now from your answer is that the voluntary choice, if it is your passion, that if it is a voluntarily chosen goal, then you are able to put your 100% or maybe more than 100%, because and then this is the best case scenario. The goal is voluntarily chosen, plus you have a family which is there to support you, and I think that's the biggest mantra of it all.
And so more importantly for UPSC, because if you do not have that that voluntary feeling, then like your father might tell you or a cousin might tell you that inner strength will never come.
Okay. So, Ronak, what are your plans now? What are you looking up to? What are you excited about? Can you tell something to the aspirants about the life which is going to be ahead? Because you might have interacted with some seniors in the services. So, like, how is it? Usually UPSC aspirants who do not have acquaintances with the selected candidates, they do not know what lies beyond. But I think you are just crossing that bridge. So can you give something which will excite the aspirants, make them look forward to becoming an IAS officer or other civil servants?
So I had 3 years of pain, but just within 3 hours of the result, that entire pain was gone. So what lies beyond is something, and rather I really haven't stepped into the real thing. Even training is not the real thing. The real thing is when I come back to my posting. So that is really far from now. But the satisfaction which one gets, that I'll be able to do what I really wanted to, and really there's no stopping now, because once we go to the training, right now I'm just most excited about going to the Lavashna Academy, and I'm just watching the YouTube videos on what all we do there. But the basic idea in getting into this UPSC is again civil services. So I had a talk, and fortunately I had a talk with a quite senior person from Calcutta. He's a bureaucrat. She told me that it's very rare that you get to be selected in this and get to render service to the people. Like there are people who retire as chief secretaries but do not achieve that satisfaction. So right from the beginning, just keep in your mind that you have to earn that satisfaction by doing what you wanted to do, by creating a change. And this, I'm not saying this as a philosophical talk or as a preaching mechanism. It really something which needs to be ingrained in the mind. And frankly, that had got off my head for the first 10 days when I was getting the attention and the calls. It really went off my head. And rightly so, it was pointed out by the senior of mine that no, the main idea is this. So keep your head towards that direction, and that is what should be the idea again for the aspirants.
Well, I have some information about it. So, when you will be going to the academy, you will have these brilliant personalities, okay, people, very high ranking people coming to you, giving you lectures, even some from the international fame, they will be there. Then you will be engaging in lots and lots of extracurricular activities. You will be doing dramatics, you will be singing songs, you know, you will be building camaraderie. You will be going for treks, a lot of treks, right? So that those are the things which you can look forward to, and ultimately one thing, I hope Ganga Dhaba is still there because you know usually the aspirants who get selected, their meeting point, the tea point or chai point is Ganga Dhaba. So I think you will have a great time and you can look forward to all of this. God bless you, and it was such a learning experience interacting with you, Ronak, and Godspeed. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ronak. Thank you.